If you're an influencer and you're thinking of starting your own supplement or food brand, know this. Number one, foods and supplements are heavily regulated by the FDA, FTC, and other agencies. And if you don't know, now you know.
And if you don't know, now you know.
And number two, the brand you build today needs to be ready for the future. And that future, if I had a crystal ball, is going to be riddled with one, a ton of influencer brands on the market, combined with two, a lot of viewers that no longer trust influencers. And here's why. You see, the audience of today, young adults, Gen Z, are going to get older. They know and understand how this whole machine works. They know that influencers are likely getting paid, getting free vacation, free stays at luxury hotels, and pretty much everything that they're pitching and supporting is, well, essentially an ad. I predict that by 2038, influencers are no longer personalities that we can, as an audience, connect with and trust. It's the perfect formula for influencer brands to fail. As in, you might be able to sell decently right now, but know that you'll have a fairly limited runway for your brand. Which leads us to lesson number one. Rewind 15 years ago and YouTubers were regular folks like you and me. And they posted videos because it was fun, because they liked doing it, and yeah, they made some money on the side. Back in those days, there was an inherent trust in YouTubers, and they were living a relatively average life, and if they happened to recommend a product, well, maybe it was good and we buy one. Now fast forward to now, and influencers isn't a person anymore, it's an industry. An industry that investors and businesses would say isn't cheap, whereby the costs are relatively comparable to traditional forms of advertising. And because influencers are so prevalent, using them doesn't guarantee returns like it used to. Because there are so many influencers with their own brand of products, the reality is that the general quality isn't great, and there's this inherent belief or perception that an influencer branded product is inferior to an established branded product. So what's the play here, right? Well, the play is to create a brand from the point of view that it can keep up with the Nikes and Apples of the world, that the brand that you're creating, that you're bringing on, can ultimately live on its own and be viewed as a reputable, dependable brand without the influencer. Another way of looking at this is to create a brand that investors can get behind. So what does that look like? Well, any smart investor would want, for starters, a brand that's not tied to one singular personality. In particular, an influencer that is outside of their control, aka organization. That's because an influencer in general is subjected to other brand deals. There's no loyalty there, and at any point could ultimately walk away, die, get caught up in some silly scandal, or cancel culture debacle. It's a paradigm shift for sure, and if you want true success that's future-proof, it's no longer about slapping your name or label to a product anymore, and instead approaching this with the end goal of creating a brand that can live on its own. Which brings us to our second lesson, but really quickly, if this is your first time here, my name is Brian and it's great to meet you. I've been in the supplement industry since 2004 and I've held executive level roles specializing in regulatory affairs and quality assurance, and I've helped food and supplement brands grow by navigating the compliance requirements of their operation, and I want to help you do the same. It's one thing to slap an influencer logo on a t-shirt and sell that in a digital storefront, but it's another thing to sell food or supplements that someone is actually going to be ingesting and putting in their bodies. Which is why my second lesson for influencers is that you're likely going to have to control your own supply chain and be more hands-on. Look, I know as an influencer, you're probably incredibly busy right now working with other brands and other deals, and would probably rather be posting other content. But if the name of the game is to build a supplement brand for the future, and taking heed of lesson number one, you and your team will need to be more hands-on with respect to owning the operation. That means being involved in selecting and managing the manufacturer, to owning the testing requirements, to product development, and to the logistics of it all. Now, as of today, I do know that for certain influencers out there, they can hire a third-party firm to deal with all of that, right? Where the third-party firm will make the product, distribute it, and they'll pay the influencer a cut to be the face of the brand. That said, I would argue that the influencer has no control of the quality, no control of the pricing and promotions, no control of the customer service. And if something were to happen, if a customer got sick, if someone ends up in the hospital, if the product is recalled by the FDA, or if a third-party firm can't deliver the orders, your customers are going after you, the influencer, because this is your brand. You're the one having to answer for all of these things, even if it wasn't technically your fault. Which is why the influencer needs ultimate control when it comes to launching a supplement brand. Now, I'm not saying you can't contract things out. Of course you can, and you're probably going to have to, but it's a very different approach, right? Contract out the functions you need done, but make sure they ultimately report to you and not the other way around. And this lets you be hands-on to ensure that you're building a very high-quality premium product to go along with your future-proof brand. Now, if you're serious about launching your own supplement brand, congratulations, you're about to embark on a very special journey. But before you do, you'd probably want to make sure your idea is viable from an FDA standpoint and also from a business standpoint. You want to make sure your product concept and brand has the ability to grow and be investor ready, and that you're using a reputable manufacturer. And I'm also willing to bet that you'd probably want to know what's ahead of you so that you can build out your entire business plan. Which is why we've got our Supplement Startup Essential Training, aka SET. And this training is intended to give influencers and entrepreneurs the fundamentals and know-how to start your supplement brand right while navigating the FDA and FTC requirements. It's packed with industry insider information and advice and tips on how to find a contract manufacturer and how to vet them. You're also going to get our contract manufacturers list and so much more in this value-packed training. I'm really excited and proud of SET, and I'm incredibly confident that this will help startups avoid the countless issues we've seen over and over again. So be sure to check out the link in the description down below for more. Now, as an influencer, I know you've got multiple income streams, of which some of it is likely managed by other third parties, and it's also likely that the products you already sell are sold directly to your audience, which allows for a slimmer markup while still yielding a pretty healthy revenue. But if you're serious about creating a brand that can live on its own and that is future-proof, well, it's a different game, and the margins that you think are fine for today is likely not going to work in the future. Pricing is so key here, and there are two approaches. One is setting the right retail price, which I think is quite obvious and top of mind for any entrepreneur. And two, a not so obvious one, is making sure that your supplement formula or functional food formula is delivering on exactly what it needs to and no more. In essence, you don't want to over-engineer a product and use costly ingredients or packaging that can't be appreciated by the customer, and as a result becomes a product that is inherently too costly. I'll throw one more point in here, and that is maybe one day you have grand aspirations of having your brand acquired. Well, it's important to lead with the mindset that your brand is investor ready. And guess what investors look for? Number one, your operations. Number two, your compliance. And number three, your financials. And to that last point, it all starts with the right retail price. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the supplement space is a highly regulated industry with very particular laws and regulations, which leads us to lesson 4. And that is, your audience can see how big your following is. I mean, there are resources out there to get a read of your analytics. And in general, the bigger you are, the more money you have, and the more money you have, the more likely litigators and lawyers are hovering around you, waiting for that moment you slip on a compliance issue, and they're ready to pounce and sue you for a nice chunk of change. And from FDA's and FTC's point of view, the more followers you have, the more likely your product is in the food or market space, as well as there's going to be more eyeballs seeing your ads and your posts. And as a result, you're going to get more scrutiny from these government agencies on your brand. It's just the nature of the beast, and you'll want to make sure that bad things don't happen. And the best way to do that is to make sure you're fully compliant. From your label claims to the specific ingredients that you use, even to how you handle customer complaints and how you determine shelf life of your product. In other words, there's a lot to factor in here. Sometimes just one simple word on your label or website can land a brand in a lot of trouble, and I've seen it firsthand. One word, posted on a social media post, and boom, account banned, and I would hate for you to experience that. Now, a lot of startups understandably rely on their contract manufacturers to help them with compliance, which leads us to the next lesson. Now, here's the typical journey for a startup brand. Person A has a product idea, they Google supplement manufacturers, the account manager talks a great game of GMP compliance and FDA registered facility and says that they're going to develop the product for you and make sure you have compliant labels, and they offer you this turnkey experience. All you have to do is sign on the dotted line and put down a 50% deposit. Here's the reality. I have yet to see a manufacturer that offers a true turnkey experience, meaning that I've seen a lot of manufacturers that aren't fully compliant. They're not giving you 100% compliance. Case in point, many manufacturers talk up FDA compliance, but they never mention a word about FTC compliance. Sorry, you're going to need to hit on both fronts. I'll throw in another example, and that is many manufacturers talk up all the testing that they can do. Keywords here being can do, not will do, as in many manufacturers will quote you a price with the most minimal, bare bones of testing in the hopes that you'll see a lower price per unit and as a result sign on the dotted line, which by the way is why a lot of private label products aren't so great. But let's strip away the details here. What's really going on? Well, when you step back, a lot of manufacturers know that you don't know the requirements. They know that you don't know how supplements are manufactured, and they also know that you don't know what questions to ask, and they're relying on that. They're relying on your lack of knowledge, and they're funneling you through their process where you're going to sign on the dotted line and commit to a purchase order without really knowing what you're getting, whether it's testing, formulation, shelf life, manufacturing capabilities, compliance liability, and more. Manufacturers would love to work with a large influencer, but let's be real, many of them do see dollar signs and will try to take advantage of you, which you'll want to protect yourself with the lessons found in SSET, which you can find more information down below, but also from these videos here to help you find a manufacturer and launch a supplement brand. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll talk to you later. Cheers.